The unexpected interview. The Mumbai monsoon had arrived with its usual dramatic flair, turning the streets into rivers and the sky into a gray canvas of chaos. Vikram Sharma stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his 20th floor office, watching the rain assault the glass with relentless determination. At 29, he had built LearnBridge from a college dorm room idea into one of Mumbai's most promising educational technology startups. But today felt like one of those days when everything could unravel. His assistant knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "Sir, the 3 p.m. interview candidate is here, but—" Ravi hesitated, glancing toward the reception area with an expression somewhere between amusement and concern. "But what?" Vikram turned away from the window, straightening his navy blazer. He had 3 interviews scheduled today for the senior software developer position, and with their biggest client presentation next week, he needed someone exceptional. She's completely soaked, sir, and her presentation materials are destroyed." Vikram sighed. Another casualty of Mumbai's weather. "Send her home. We can reschedule. Actually, sir, she insists she can still do the interview. Says she has a better idea anyway." Curiosity flickered in Vikram's chest. In his experience, most candidates would have fled after such a disaster. "Fine. Give me 5 minutes, then. Send her in." He settled behind his mahogany desk, pulling up her resume on his laptop. Priya Desai, 25 years old, computer science degree from College of Engineering, Pune. Impressive grades, but what caught his attention was her project. History, all focused on low-resource educational solutions. Rural internet connectivity, offline learning modules, voice-based interfaces for non-literate users. Unusual for someone applying to a Mumbai-based startup that primarily served urban schools. The door opened, and in walked someone who looked nothing like the polished professionals he usually interviewed. Priya Desai was indeed soaked to the bone, her black hair escaping from what had once been a neat bun, her simple cotton kurta clinging uncomfortably. But her dark eyes blazed with determination, and she carried herself with an unshakable confidence that made Vikram forget about her disheveled appearance. "Mr. Sharma, I'm Priya Desai," she said, extending a hand that was surprisingly steady. "I apologize for my appearance. Mumbai's weather seemed determined to test my commitment to this opportunity." Vikram shook her hand, noting her firm grip. "Please sit. I understand your presentation materials were damaged?" "Completely destroyed," she said with a laugh that was more musical than bitter. "But honestly, I think it's a blessing. PowerPoint. Presentations are terrible for demonstrating real innovation anyway." She stood up again and walked to the whiteboard that occupied one wall of his office. "May I?" Intrigued despite himself, Vikram nodded. Priya picked up a marker and began, drawing with quick, confident strokes. "Your company, LearnBridge, focuses on interactive learning apps for urban schools with high-speed internet and modern devices, correct?" "That's right. But what about the 65% of Indian children who don't have access to those resources?" She drew a simple map of India, marking urban centers with circles and leaving vast areas blank. "What about the girl in Vidarbha whose school has electricity for only 4 hours a day? The boy in Rajasthan who shares a single smartphone among 50 classmates?" Her marker moved rapidly, sketching scenarios with remarkable clarity. Vikram found himself leaning forward, captivated not just by her ideas, but by the passion radiating from her entire being. "Technology shouldn't be a privilege," she continued, turning to face him. "It should be a bridge, and bridges work both ways. Urban schools could benefit from the resourcefulness and creativity that rural constraints inspire, while rural schools gain access to quality content and connectivity solutions." She had transformed his whiteboard into a comprehensive vision of inclusive education technology, complete with technical specifications, user scenarios, and implementation strategies. All improvised, all coherent, all brilliant. This is what I want to build with LearnBridge, Priya said, capping the marker. Not just apps for the privileged, but solutions for everyone. The question is, are you interested in actually changing education, or just profitable enough with the status quo? The challenge in her voice should have irritated him. Instead, Vikram felt something he hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement about the possibilities his company could explore. The position was for a senior developer, he said carefully, and I'm the developer who can help you reach every child in India, not just the ones who can afford your current solutions. Vikram looked at the whiteboard, then at the young woman, standing beside it, chin raised in defiant hope. Every rational part of his business mind screamed that she was too idealistic, too focused on social impact over profitability. But something deeper, something that remembered why he had started LearnBridge in the first place, whispered that she might be exactly what his company needed. "When can you start?" he heard himself saying. Priya's confident facade cracked for just a moment, revealing surprised delight. "Seriously?" "Seriously. But I should warn you, we move fast here, and the expectations are high." She grinned, and Vikram felt his carefully ordered world tilt slightly on its axis. "Mr. Sharma, I've been working with high expectations and limited resources my entire life. This will be easy." As she gathered her things to leave, Vikram realized that hiring Priya Desai was either the smartest decision he'd made in years or the one that would completely upend everything he'd built. Looking at the vision she'd left on his whiteboard, he found himself hoping for the latter. Building bridges 3 weeks into her tenure at LearnBridge, Priya had already turned Vikram's perfectly organized world upside down. She arrived each morning with a thermos of homemade chai and ideas that challenged every assumption his company had operated on for the past 4 years. "We can't launch the premium subscription model for rural schools," she declared during their Monday morning strategy meeting, her laptop displaying usage statistics that made the marketing team shift uncomfortably. "Look at these numbers. Rural users engage with our free content 300% more than urban users engage with paid features. They're not less committed to education. They're more resourceful with limited access." Vikram rubbed his temples, feeling the familiar tension that had become his constant companion since hiring her. "Priya, we have investors to satisfy, revenue projections to meet. We can't run a charity." "I'm not suggesting charity," she shot back, her eyes flashing with the intensity he'd grown both to anticipate and secretly admire. "I'm suggesting smart business. What if we created a reverse model? Rural schools generate content, local stories, regional language lessons, traditional knowledge that urban schools pay premium prices to access. Authenticity is the new luxury." The room fell silent. Vikram's head of marketing, Arjun, leaned forward with interest. "That's actually innovative. Urban parents are obsessed with giving their kids real experiences." "Exactly," Priya continued, warming to her theme. "We become a platform where education flows both ways. Rural creativity meets urban resources. Everyone wins." Vikram found himself studying her face as she spoke, noting how her entire being seemed to light up when discussing educational equity. When had he started noticing the way her nose crinkled slightly when she was thinking, or how she unconsciously braided and unbraided a small section of her hair during intense conversations? "It's worth exploring," he said carefully, earning a surprised smile from Priya that did strange things to his pulse. "But we'll need detailed projections, user research, and a pilot program." "Already working on it," she said, pulling up another presentation. "I've been in contact with 12 rural schools and 15 urban schools. The interest is overwhelming." After the meeting, as the team filed out, Vikram found himself alone with Priya in the conference room. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting golden highlights in her dark hair. "You realize you're proposing to restructure our entire business model," he said, not entirely as a criticism. She looked up from her laptop, meeting his gaze directly. I realize you hired me to challenge the status quo. Was I wrong? The honesty in her question caught him off guard. No, he said quietly. You weren't wrong. Their working relationship developed its own rhythm over the following weeks. Vikram would arrive at the office to find Priya already there, surrounded by multiple cups of chai and whiteboards covered in her flowing handwriting. She worked with an intensity that both impressed and concerned him, often forgetting to eat lunch, staying until well past midnight to test new features. One evening, finding her still at her desk at 10 p.m., he made a decision that surprised them both. "Come on," he said, appearing at her workstation with 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the break room. "I'm almost finished with the voice interface for the Marathi module," she protested, not looking up from her screen. "It'll be here tomorrow. You won't be if you keep this pace." When she still didn't move, he added, "That's not a request from your colleague. It's an order from your boss." She looked up then, eyebrows raised. "Using your authority to force me to take breaks? How very corporate of you, Mr. Sharma." "It's Vikram. And yes, I'm pulling rank. We're going to the terrace." The office terrace offered a stunning view of Mumbai's skyline, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. They sat on the bench that some previous tenant had left behind, drinking bad coffee and listening to the distant hum of traffic 20 floors below. "Why education technology?" Vikram asked after a comfortable silence. "With your skills, you could work anywhere. Google, Microsoft, any of the big tech companies." Priya was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight he hadn't heard before. "When I was 12, my village got its first computer," she said, eyes fixed on the horizon. "It was this ancient desktop that the government donated to our school. Half the keys were broken, and it could barely run Windows 98, but to us, it was magic." She drew her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller against the vast city spread before them. "Our teacher, Sharma ji, no relation to you," she added, with a small smile. "Didn't know much about computers either, but he spent his own money to travel to Pune, learned basic programming, came back and taught us. I learned to code on that machine. 15 kids sharing one computer, taking turns, typing for 10 minutes each." Vikram felt something tighten in his chest as he listened. Sharma ji used to say that education was the only inheritance the poor could leave their children. That computer opened a world to me that I never knew existed. But it also showed me how many barriers stood between rural kids and opportunity. She turned to look at him directly. "Your family could afford good schools, private tutoring, high-speed internet. You built this company because you had the resources and opportunity to fail safely. Most kids from places like my village don't get that luxury." The observation stung, because it was accurate. Vikram's father was a successful businessman who had funded Vikram's first 3 startup failures before LearnBridge succeeded. "I don't resent your advantages," Priya continued, her voice gentler now, "but I want to use them to create opportunities for kids who remind me of who I used to be." They sat in comfortable silence, the weight of her words settling between them. Vikram found himself studying her profile in the dim light, wondering when her passion for social justice had begun to feel like a personal inspiration rather than a professional challenge. "What about you?" she asked suddenly. "Why education? Why not fintech or e-commerce or any of the other sectors that promise faster returns?" The question he'd avoided in interviews and investor meetings for years. "Honestly, because I was terrible at school." Priya's eyebrows rose in surprise. "I had every advantage. Expensive private school, unlimited tutoring, parents who could afford any resource I needed. But I couldn't focus, couldn't retain information the way traditional teaching methods expected. I was labeled lazy, unmotivated, a disappointment." He paused, remembering the frustration and shame of those years. "It wasn't until college that I discovered I learned differently. I need interactive content, visual aids, the ability to explore concepts at my own pace. I realized that if someone with all my privileges could fall through the cracks of the education system, how many kids with fewer advantages were being left behind entirely? So you built LearnBridge to be the solution you wished you'd had, Priya said softly. Something like that. He looked at her, feeling an unexpected vulnerability, though I'm starting to think I built it too narrowly. Your ideas, they're challenging me to remember the bigger purpose. The moment stretched between them, filled with understanding that went beyond their professional relationship. Vikram became acutely aware of how close they were sitting, how her presence had begun to feel like the most natural thing in his world. We should get back, Priya said eventually, though she made no move to stand. We should, he agreed, also not moving. It was nearly midnight when they finally packed up their things. As they waited for the elevator, Priya said quietly, "Thank you for listening tonight, and for the terrible coffee. Thank you for reminding me why I started this company in the first place." The elevator arrived, and as they rode down together, in comfortable silence, Vikram realized that something fundamental had shifted between them. The line between professional collaboration and personal connection was beginning to blur, and he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to stop it. The breakthrough moment. 2 months later, LearnBridge was facing its most critical moment since founding. The Maharashtra State Education Board had invited them to present their rural education initiative, a contract worth 50 lakhs that could validate Priya's vision and secure the company's future for the next 3 years. Everything they had worked toward hinged on this single presentation. Network connectivity confirmed, backup systems tested, presentation loaded on 3 different devices. Arjun rattled off their checklist as the team gathered in the conference room at 7 a.m. The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Education Board's offices in South Mumbai. Priya hadn't slept the night before, perfecting their demo and running through every possible scenario. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue kurta, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, looking every inch the professional she had become. But Vikram could see the nervous energy in the way she kept adjusting her silver bangles. The rural connectivity simulation is running perfectly, she reported, her voice steady despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. I've tested it on 3 different network speeds, including the 2G connections that most of our target schools still rely on. Excellent. Vikram closed his laptop and stood. Team, this is what we've been building toward. Priya's research shows that rural engagement rates are triple the national average when content is culturally relevant and accessible. Today we proved that inclusive education isn't just morally right, it's profitable. The drive to the Education Board offices should have taken 30 minutes. Mumbai's traffic had other plans. What started as moderate congestion quickly escalated into complete gridlock when a fallen tree from the previous night's storm blocked the main arterial road. "Sir, there's no alternate route," their driver announced apologetically as they sat, motionless in a sea of honking vehicles. "The radio says it will take at least 2 hours to clear." Vikram felt his stomach drop. They had 45 minutes until the presentation, and they were still 20 kilometers away. Around him, his team's confident energy began to shift toward panic. "We can reschedule," Arjun suggested, already reaching for his phone. "Explain the situation. They'll understand." "No." Priya's voice cut through the mounting anxiety with surprising firmness. "This board meets once a quarter. The next opportunity isn't until December, and our funding won't last that long." She was right, but Vikram couldn't see any alternative. They were trapped in traffic with the most important presentation of the company's history waiting for them. Across the city. "There's a solution," Priya said suddenly, her eyes lighting up with the intensity Vikram had learned to associate with her most innovative ideas. "Vikram, can you get them on a video call?" "A video call?" "Priya, this is the State Education Board, not a casual client meeting. Trust me." She was already pulling out her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Remember our core principle. The best solutions come from working within constraints, not around them. 20 minutes later, Vikram found himself staring at a conference room full of serious-faced government officials through his laptop screen while sitting in the back seat of a car stuck in Mumbai traffic. Priya had somehow convinced the board secretary to set up an emergency video conference, arguing that technical difficulties were exactly why their rural education platform was needed. "Honorable members," Priya began, her voice steady and professional. Despite the chaos around them, we're here today not just to present a product, but to demonstrate a principle. Real education happens where students are, not where we wish they were. She had connected her phone to the laptop, creating a split screen that showed both their current situation and her presentation slides. Right now, we're experiencing the same connectivity challenges that rural students face daily. Unreliable conditions, limited bandwidth, unexpected obstacles. But learning doesn't stop because conditions aren't perfect. Vikram watched in amazement as she began to demonstrate their platform's offline capabilities, showing how students could download lessons during brief periods of connectivity and continue learning even when the network failed. She used their current traffic jam as a real-time example of how the system adapted to constraints. Our rural pilot program in Satara district serves 500 students across 12 villages, she continued, pulling up data on her screen while simultaneously narrating their technical specifications. Average daily engagement time is 4.2 hours, compared to 1.8 hours for traditional online platforms. Why? Because we've designed for their reality, not our assumptions. The board members began asking technical questions, their initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. Dr. Patel, the board's technology advisor, leaned forward on the screen. "Ms. Desai, how do you ensure content quality when teachers have limited technical training?" Without missing a beat, Priya switched to a different screen showing their teacher training modules. "We've developed a peer-to-peer learning system. Master trainers in district headquarters train cluster coordinators, who then train village teachers. But the real innovation is our reverse mentoring program. Tech-savvy students help teachers with technical issues, while teachers provide pedagogical expertise. Everyone teaches, everyone learns." Vikram found himself barely breathing as he watched her field question after question with expertise and passion. She wasn't just presenting their product. She was painting a vision of education that was inclusive, practical, and transformative. Then disaster struck. "I'm sorry," Dr. Patel's voice crackled through suddenly poor audio, "but we're losing your video connection. The call is breaking up." The screen froze, pixelated, then went black. Vikram's heart sank. They had been so close, but Mumbai's infrastructure had betrayed them at the crucial moment. "Can you reconnect?" he asked Priya urgently. She was already trying, but her phone showed no signal. Around them, traffic had started moving, but slowly, and they were still 15 minutes from the education board offices. "There's another way," Priya said suddenly. She pulled out her second phone, an older model that she always carried for testing their apps on low-spec devices. "This has a stronger antenna and better connectivity in poor signal areas." Within minutes, she had re-established contact using voice-only connection. But instead of apologizing for the technical difficulties, she turned the situation into the most powerful demonstration of their platform's value. Honorable members, what just happened is exactly why traditional e-learning fails in rural areas. Unreliable connectivity, device limitations, network congestion. But watch this. Using only audio, she walked them through their platform's voice-based interface, designed for students who might not have access to high-speed internet or advanced smartphones. She demonstrated how lessons could be delivered through simple voice commands, how assessments could be completed through spoken responses, and how the system automatically synced data when connections improved. A student in Vidarbha dealing with power cuts and network issues faces the same challenges we just experienced. The difference is, Our platform is designed to thrive in these conditions, not just survive them. By the time they reached the Education Board offices 30 minutes later, the officials were ready to sign the contract. Dr. Patel greeted them at the door with a smile. Ms. Desai, Mr. Sharma, that was the most convincing demonstration of adaptive technology we've ever seen. You didn't just tell us your platform works in difficult conditions. You proved it. As they finalized the paperwork, Vikram kept stealing glances at Priya, who was calmly answering final technical questions as if she hadn't just saved their entire company with her quick thinking and unshakable composure. That evening, the team celebrated at a small restaurant in Bandra, but Vikram found himself wanting to talk to Priya alone. After the others left, he suggested they walk along the seafront. "I've been thinking about what happened today," he said as they strolled along. The bandstand promenade, the sound of waves mixing with distant traffic. The presentation? I think it went well, considering the circumstances. Not just the presentation, the way you turned a crisis into an opportunity, the way you see solutions where everyone else sees problems. He stopped walking and turned to face her. "The way you've changed how I think about everything we're building." Priya looked at him curiously, the streetlights casting soft shadows across her face. "When I hired you, I thought I was getting a talented developer who could help us expand into rural markets. I didn't expect—" He struggled for words that wouldn't sound unprofessional or inappropriate. "What didn't you expect?" she asked softly. "I didn't expect you to make me want to be better at this. Not just better at business, but better at understanding what we're really trying to accomplish. You've reminded me that LearnBridge isn't just a company, it's a responsibility." They stood there in the warm Mumbai evening, the weight of unspoken understanding settling between them. Vikram felt something shifting, a recognition that his feelings for Priya had evolved far beyond professional admiration. "Priya, Vikram." She placed her hand gently on his arm, and the simple contact sent electricity through his entire system. "I know. I feel it too." The admission hung in the air between them, filled with possibility and complications in equal measure. "But we work," she continued, though she didn't remove her hand. "And I've worked too hard to get here to compromise my professional reputation." He nodded, understanding but feeling the loss of missed opportunity like a physical ache. "You're right. Of course, you're right." "That doesn't make it easier," she said quietly. They walked back toward the main road in comfortable silence, both aware that something fundamental had changed between them, even if they couldn't act on it. As Vikram helped her into an auto rickshaw, their fingers brushed briefly, and he felt the familiar surge of connection that had become both his favorite and most frustrating part of working with her. Watching the rickshaw disappear into Mumbai's traffic, Vikram realized that falling for Priya Desai might be the most natural thing that had ever happened to him. Managing those feelings while maintaining their professional relationship, however, was going to be the greatest challenge of his career. Complications and consequences. The success of the Maharashtra State Education Board contract transformed LearnBridge overnight. Within weeks, inquiries poured in from education departments across 3 states, and their user base grew from thousands to hundreds of thousands. Priya's rural education model had proven not only viable but revolutionary, earning recognition from education policy experts and technology magazines alike. But success brought scrutiny, and scrutiny brought complications that neither Vikram nor Priya had anticipated. It started with whispers in the office kitchen. Vikram first noticed the sudden silence that fell over conversations when he walked into a room, the way colleagues' eyes would dart between him and Priya during meetings. The change was subtle at first, a certain tension in team interactions, meaningful glances exchanged when he praised Priya's work, which he did often because her contributions were genuinely exceptional. "Sir, We need to discuss the optics of the new organizational structure, Arjun said during what Vikram had assumed was a routine meeting about quarterly reviews. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, exactly 6 months after Priya had joined the company. Optics? Vikram looked up from his laptop, confused. Arjun shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The promotion you're planning for Priya. Making her head of rural innovation, giving her a separate team, the salary increase. People are talking. She's earned every bit of recognition she's received. Her work secured our biggest contract and opened an entirely new market segment. I know that, and you know that, but Arjun hesitated, then pushed forward. But others are saying she's gotten ahead because of her personal relationship with you. The words hit Vikram like cold water. What personal relationship? We're colleagues. We work well together professionally. Vikram, you spend more time with her than with anyone else in the company. You stay late when she stays late. You take coffee breaks together, have private meetings that go on for hours, and everyone's noticed how you look at her during presentations. How? I look at her? Like she hung the moon, Arjun said bluntly. And maybe she did, professionally speaking. But from the outside, it looks like favoritism at best and something else at worst. Vikram felt his stomach sink. He had been so careful to maintain professional boundaries, but apparently not careful, enough to prevent gossip that could damage both his and Priya's reputations. What exactly are people saying? That her rapid advancement has less to do with her coding skills and more to do with her personal skills. That the Rural Education Initiative succeeded because you're infatuated with its creator, not because of its inherent merit. That she's using her influence with you to reshape the entire company according to her vision. Each word felt like a small betrayal, not just of him, but of Priya's genuine talent and extraordinary contributions. That's absurd. Her work speaks for itself. Does it? Arjun leaned forward. Look, I've worked with you for 3 years. I've never seen you this invested in an employee's ideas, this willing to restructure fundamental business strategies based on one person's recommendations. If I can see the difference in how you treat her, everyone can. The meeting left Vikram deeply unsettled, but he initially decided to ignore the gossip and focus on business results. Their success metrics were undeniable. Their client satisfaction was through the roof, and Priya's innovations were generating revenue streams that exceeded even their most optimistic projections. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder and more specific. 2 weeks later, during their regular one-on-one meeting, Priya seemed distracted and tense. She answered his questions about project timelines with unusual brevity and avoided the easy professional banter that had become their norm. Is everything all right? He finally asked. You seem distant. Priya looked up from her laptop, and he was surprised to see frustration and hurt in her eyes. Vikram, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer honestly. Of course. Did you promote me because of my work or because of your feelings for me? The question hit him like a physical blow. Your work, absolutely. How can you even ask that? Because 3 people have asked me the same question this week, she said, her voice steady but pained. Because someone in accounting made a joke about special performance bonuses when my salary increase was processed. Because I overheard 2 developers discussing whether my rural education project would survive if we stopped having our special meetings. Vikram felt anger rising in his chest, not at Priya, but at the situation that was causing her to question herself and him, to feel defensive about decisions he knew were professionally sound. Priya, your contributions to this company have been transformative. You've opened new markets, increased user engagement across all demographics, and created solutions that will impact millions of students. I promoted you because you earned it 10 times over. I know that, and you know that. But perception matters, especially for women in tech. She closed her laptop and looked at him directly. I've worked twice as hard as my male colleagues my entire career to prove that my ideas have value independent of my gender. Now people are suggesting that my success is based on personal relationships rather than professional merit. It's undermining everything I've accomplished. The pain in her voice cut through Vikram's defensive anger, leaving only the sick realization that their unspoken feelings were professionally damaging the woman he cared about. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. "I think I should transfer to a different team, or maybe take the rural implementation role that would relocate me to our field offices in smaller towns. Create some physical distance between us so people can evaluate my work objectively. That would be terrible for the company and for the rural education program. You're the only person who fully understands both the technical requirements and the cultural sensitivities." "It would be terrible for me too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I love this work, and I love working with you. But I can't build my career on a foundation that people consider compromised." They sat in silence for several long moments, the weight of an impossible situation settling between them. Vikram understood her position completely, even as it broke his heart. She had worked too hard and come too far to have her professional achievements questioned because of gossip about their relationship. A relationship that, ironically, they had been careful never to pursue. "When would you want to make the transfer?" he asked finally. "End of the month. That gives us time to transition my current projects and set up the rural implementation team structure. Priya, for what it's worth, working with you has been the highlight of my professional career. Your ideas haven't just changed LearnBridge. They've changed how I think about the responsibility we have to our users." She smiled sadly. "For what? It's worth. Falling for you has been both the most natural and most complicated thing that's ever happened to me." The admission hung in the air between them. The first time either had openly acknowledged the feelings that everyone else seemed to see so clearly. "We're going to make this work," Vikram said with more confidence than he felt. "The rural program will succeed because it's brilliant, not because of office politics. And your career will flourish because you're exceptionally talented, regardless of what small-minded people want to believe." "I hope you're right." "I am right. But I also understand why you need to do this." The next few weeks were professionally productive and personally painful. Vikram threw himself into supporting Priya's transition while maintaining the careful distance that office gossip demanded. They had necessary meetings about project handovers and strategic planning, but the easy connection and personal warmth that had developed between them was carefully suppressed. Watching her pack up her desk on her last day in the Mumbai office was one of the hardest things Vikram had ever experienced. She was moving to Nashik, where LearnBridge was opening a field office to directly support rural schools in Maharashtra's interior regions. It was a promotion by any objective measure. She would head her own team, implement her vision on a larger scale, and have the autonomy to develop innovations without corporate oversight. It was also a form of professional exile that separated her from the company's strategic center and from him. "I'll be back for quarterly reviews and planning meetings," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "And we'll have video conferences for project updates. Weekly check-ins to make sure you have everything you need." "Right. Strictly professional. Strictly professional," he agreed, though the words felt hollow. As she left the office for the last time, wheeling a small suitcase that held her personal belongings, Vikram realized that doing the right thing professionally didn't make it hurt any less. Personally, he had hired Priya to help expand LearnBridge's impact. Instead, she had expanded his understanding of what the company could be, what he could be, and what he wanted from both his professional and personal life. Now, she was leaving to protect both their reputations, and he was left with the success they had built together and the painful awareness that the person who had inspired it would no longer be part of his daily world. Full circle 6 months passed, with the mechanical precision of scheduled video calls and quarterly reports. Priya's rural education program exceeded every projection, transforming from an experimental initiative into LearnBridge's flagship success story. Student engagement rates in rural areas had increased by 400%, and the program was being studied by education policy experts across South Asia. 3 other Indian states had signed contracts, and international development organizations were requesting consultations. Vikram followed every milestone through carefully professional communication channels, celebrating her achievements from a distance while trying to ignore the growing emptiness in his daily routine. The office felt different without her presence. More efficient, perhaps, but lacking the creative energy and passionate debates that had made coming to work feel like an adventure. The rural program has generated 47% of our Q2 revenue, Arjun reported during their Monday morning leadership meeting. It's officially our most successful product line. Excellent. Send my congratulations to the field team, Vikram replied, though he knew Priya would receive the message third-hand through official channels rather than directly from him. Their weekly video conferences were exercises in professional restraint. Priya would update him on program metrics, user feedback, and expansion plans with the same thoroughness she had always brought to her work. But the easy warmth and intellectual excitement that had characterized their relationship was carefully absent, replaced by the polite efficiency of colleagues who barely knew each other. The pilot program in Aurangabad has shown particularly strong results, she said during their Thursday call, her image pixelated slightly by the rural internet connection. We're seeing 95% student retention rates compared to 60% in traditional programs. That's remarkable. What do you attribute the success to? Local content integration and peer-to-peer learning structures. When students see their own communities represented in the curriculum, engagement increases exponentially. She looked different, Vikram noticed, more confident in her professional authority, more comfortable speaking as an expert rather than a team member seeking approval. The rural fieldwork had added a natural ease to her manner, but something vital seemed missing from her eyes. Any challenges we should be aware of? Scaling too quickly could compromise quality. We need to hire more local coordinators and develop additional teacher training modules before expanding to the next phase. Professional, thorough, completely lacking the personal connection that had once made their collaboration feel electric. After the call ended, Vikram sat staring at his blank screen, wondering if professional success was supposed to feel this hollow. LearnBridge was thriving, his rural program was changing lives, and he had successfully navigated the gossip and office politics that had threatened both their reputations. So why did he feel like he had lost something irreplaceable? The answer came to him 3 weeks later, when he received an invitation that changed everything. "Sir, there's an education conference in Nashik next Friday," his assistant informed him. "The organizers are requesting a keynote presentation about LearnBridge's rural education model. They specifically asked for either you or Ms. Desai to present." Vikram's first instinct was to send Priya alone. She was the program's architect and most knowledgeable advocate. But something made him pause. Maybe it was professional curiosity about seeing the rural program in action. Maybe it was the realization that he hadn't traveled outside Mumbai for months, hadn't engaged directly with the educators and students their platform served. Or maybe it was the simple, honest acknowledgement that he missed working with Priya and wanted an excuse to see her again, even in a professional context. "I'll do the keynote," he decided, "but arrange for Ms. Desai to co-present the technical components. This program is her vision. She should be the one explaining it to other educators." The drive from Mumbai to Nashik took him through landscapes he rarely saw from his 20th floor office. Rolling hills gave way to farmland, urban density, replaced by rural expanses that reminded him why Priya's work was so important. This was the India that traditional tech companies ignored, the market that LearnBridge was finally serving effectively. The conference was being held at a teacher training college on the outskirts of Nashik, a modest institution that served educators from across northern Maharashtra. Vikram arrived early, hoping to tour some of the local schools where their program was being implemented. "Mr. Sharma!" A young teacher approached him with obvious excitement. "I'm Meera Patil. I've been using LearnBridge in my classroom for 8 months. Your platform has completely transformed how my students engage with learning." As she led him through her village school, 2 rooms, 40 students, and a dedication to education that shone despite limited resources, Vikram understood something he had only grasped intellectually before. This wasn't just about technology, or market expansion, or revenue growth. This was about a 10-year-old girl named Kavya who was learning English through interactive stories, a 13-year-old boy named Rohan who was exploring advanced mathematics concepts that his school couldn't traditionally offer. "Before LearnBridge, my students had access to textbooks and whatever I could teach them," Meera explained as they watched children gathered around 2 shared tablets, working collaboratively on a science lesson. "Now they have access to the same quality educational content as students in Mumbai or Delhi. The playing field is finally level." When Vikram arrived at the conference venue that afternoon, he saw Priya before she saw him. She was sitting under a large banyan tree behind the main building, surrounded by a group of teachers who were listening intently as she demonstrated something on her laptop. Her hair was longer than it had been in Mumbai, braided loosely over one shoulder, and she wore a simple cotton sari in deep green that made her look both professional and approachable. She was in her element, Vikram realized. This was where her passion and expertise converged most naturally, not in corporate conference rooms, but in direct conversation with the educators and students who used their platform daily. "Priya ma'am has shown us how to adapt the voice interface for our local dialect," one of the teachers was saying. "Now students can ask questions in Marathi and receive responses that feel natural and familiar." "The key," Priya replied, "is remembering that technology should adapt to users, not the other way around. These children shouldn't have to learn English before they can learn science or mathematics. The platform should speak their language, literally and figuratively." Vikram stood at a distance, not wanting to interrupt but fascinated by this side of Priya's work that he had only seen through reports and metrics. Here, she wasn't just a talented developer or innovative thinker, she was a bridge between technological possibility and educational reality. When the informal session ended and the teachers dispersed, Priya finally noticed him standing near the building entrance. For a moment, her professional composure slipped, and he saw surprise and something else, pleasure, flash across her face before she collected herself. "Vikram, I didn't know you were planning to attend." Last minute decision. "I wanted to see the rural program in action, understand how it's being implemented at the ground level." They stood looking at each other, months of careful professional distance, suddenly feeling artificial and unnecessary in this setting where their shared work was so obviously making a difference. "Would you like to see the field office?" she asked. "It's about 20 minutes from here. We can discuss the keynote presentation on the way." The LearnBridge field office was housed in a converted residence on the outskirts of Nashik. 3 rooms that served as workspace, training center, and technical support hub for dozens of rural schools. It was modest compared to their Mumbai headquarters, but buzzing with purposeful activity. "We have 12 staff members now," Priya explained as she showed him around. "Local coordinators who work directly with schools, technical support specialists who handle connectivity issues, and content developers who create region-specific educational materials.